I'll never forget the day my grandma entrusted my uncle with her life savings. 900,000. Every penny she had worked for, every sacrifice she made, was now in his hands. "Take care of me," she said, her eyes pleading but hopeful. And I believed him too at first. Grandma had always been the rock of our family. She was gentle, wise, and had a laugh that could fill a room. She raised my dad, she helped raise me, and somehow she always managed to make everyone feel safe and loved. But now, in her late 80s, she needed someone to lean on, and she chose my uncle. The first warning signs were subtle. He would call her late at night, asking for favors, insisting she gives him money for urgent expenses. Grandma, ever trusting, gave him small amounts of money. I noticed, but I didn't think much of it at the time. After all, he was family, right? Then came that stormy night. I'll never forget it. The wind howled outside, rain slamming against the windows like it wanted to break in. I got a call from Grandma, her voice trembling. "Hey," he turned me away, she whispered. My heart stopped. Turned her away. She was 88, frail, and alone in the middle of a storm. I raced over, adrenaline pumping. When I arrived, I found her shivering on the porch, wrapped in a thin blanket. My uncle was nowhere in sight. I helped her inside, wrapped her in warm towels, and made her tea. She looked at me with gratitude but also fear in her eyes. "I don't know why he did this," she said, voice cracking. "I thought he loved me. I thought he would protect me." That night, as I sat by her side, I promised her I would. I promised I would make sure she was safe, that no one would ever betray her again. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. Because months later, when the lawyer called us for the will reading, everything changed. Grandma's final wishes were revealed, and the truth was more shocking than anyone could have imagined. My uncle's betrayal. It wasn't just cruel, it was about to backfire most unforgettably. By the end of this story, you'll see exactly how a kind, trusting woman outsmarted betrayal and ensured her family's legacy was protected. You'll witness the drama, the heartbreak, and the ultimate justice. But first, let me take you back and explain how it all started, why Grandma trusted him, and the early signs that something wasn't right. Grandma had always been the kind of person who believed in the good of people. Born during the tough years of the 1930s, she had learned to work hard, save every penny, and never let anyone in her family go without. She ran a small bakery for most of her life, waking up before sunrise every day, kneading dough and tending to her customers with a smile that seemed to make the whole neighborhood feel warmer. I remember spending hours in that bakery as a child. Grandma would let me mix the batter, sprinkle sugar over freshly baked bread, and tell me stories about her childhood. Those stories weren't just about growing up, they were lessons about trust, hard work, and loyalty. She taught me to always protect those who cannot protect themselves, and that family is more than blood. It's love and care. As the years went by, her family grew. My dad, her only son, had always been protective of her. He had a soft heart, but he trusted people too easily. My uncle, my dad's younger brother, had always been a different story. On the surface, he was charming, charismatic, and always ready to offer a helping hand. But beneath that charm there were cracks. He tended to take shortcuts, had a hunger for money, and a willing to bend rules if it meant personal gain. Grandma never seemed to notice, or maybe she refused to believe it. When she turned 85, Grandma started thinking about her estate. She had no intention of letting her hard-earned savings fall into the wrong hands. Her plan was simple: leave her money to people she trusted to care for her and preserve her legacy. Naturally, she thought of my uncle. He had been close to her for most of his life. She saw him as someone dependable, someone family could rely on. And so she entrusted him with her 900,000 estate, believing he would care for her in her twilight years. Looking back, there were little signs that things were not as perfect as they seemed. The first time I noticed anything was when I went to visit her one afternoon. My uncle had been staying over, supposedly to help with her daily errands. I found him counting money from one of her savings envelopes, muttering about bills and expenses. Grandma had no idea, sitting quietly in the corner, trusting him completely. I said nothing at the time. I wasn't sure if I was overreacting, but something in me didn't feel right. Then came the subtle manipulations. My uncle started making small requests, asking Grandma to lend him money for emergencies, or to sign documents she didn't fully understand. Each time, she would nod and comply, trusting him like she had trusted the world her entire life. I noticed her hesitation once, the way her hands shook when she handed him a check, but she always brushed it off, smiling politely, saying, "He's family. He wouldn't hurt me." Meanwhile, I started paying closer attention. I began observing his behavior, noting the inconsistencies between what he said and what he did. He would tell Grandma he was going to the store or handling bills, but sometimes I would see him driving away in her car, returning hours later with excuses that didn't add up. I confronted him once, trying to gauge his reaction. He smiled that same charming smile, shrugged, and said, "Don't worry, it's all under control." But it wasn't control, it was manipulation. Despite my concerns, Grandma's faith in him never wavered. That was her strength, but also her vulnerability. She had a heart too big for this world, and in her desire to trust, she ignored the early warning signs. I couldn't blame her. How could anyone, especially someone who had given so much of herself to her family, foresee the betrayal that was quietly building in her own home? At the same time, I found myself torn. I loved my uncle. I always had. But I also couldn't ignore the growing unease gnawing at me. I started visiting more often, staying close to Grandma, watching interactions carefully, noting each subtle sign of greed, impatience, or disrespect. My role was slowly shifting from observer to protector. And that's when things began to escalate. Little arguments between Grandma and my uncle started becoming more frequent. He would raise his voice over trivial matters, complain about her instructions, or belittle her in small, almost imperceptible ways. Grandma, gentle as ever, would apologize, trying to smooth things over. But I could see the hurt in her eyes. The trust she had placed in someone she loved was slowly being chipped away. It was during this period that I realized just how much of a chess game this had become. My uncle was making moves, carefully, calculatingly, thinking he could outsmart everyone, take control of Grandma's estate, and betray her trust without consequences. And I knew I couldn't let that happen. Not if I wanted to honor her years of hard work, not if I wanted to protect the family she had spent her entire life building. By the time that stormy night came, the night he turned her away, the foundation had been laid. The subtle manipulations, the small betrayals, the quiet displays of greed, they all built up to that moment of crisis. And that moment would change everything. The first cracks in my uncle's charm began to widen slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. It wasn't one dramatic moment. It was a series of small incidents that gradually revealed the truth. It started with the bills. Grandma had always been meticulous with her finances. She kept everything organized in neat folders, carefully noting every expense, every deposit, every dollar she earned from her bakery years ago. One evening, as I was visiting her, I noticed that a stack of her financial papers was missing. When I asked, she shrugged, smiling nervously. "I must have misplaced them," she said. But I knew better. My uncle had been in the house that day, supposedly helping her organize her finances. Then came the phone calls. Grandma would answer, and I could hear the thinly veiled impatience in my uncle's voice. "Mom, you don't need to worry about that. I'll handle it," he would say. On the surface, it sounded caring, but the tone was condescending, almost dismissive. I could see it in Grandma's eyes, the flicker of doubt, the shadow of fear. The situation escalated gradually, until that stormy night, the night that would change everything. The rain poured down in torrents, and the wind howled like a living thing, shaking the windows of Grandma's house. I received a call from her in the middle of the night. Her voice was trembling, almost breaking. "Hey," he turned me away, she whispered. My heart sank, turned her away. She was frail, alone, and dependent on him for support. I jumped into my car and raced through the storm. Every red light, every puddle, every flash of lightning seemed magnified as my mind raced with fear and anger. When I arrived, I found her sitting on the porch, shivering and wrapped in a thin blanket. My uncle was nowhere in sight, and the sight of my grandmother's small, trembling figure sent a chill down my spine. I helped her inside, wrapped her in warm towels, and made her tea, trying to calm her quaking hands. She looked at me with eyes filled with gratitude, but also hurt and disbelief. "I don't know why he did this," she said, voice cracking. "I thought he loved me. I thought he would protect me." I held her hand tightly, promising her I would take care of her. That night, as the storm raged outside, I realized something important. This wasn't just a lapse in judgment. It was calculated. My uncle wasn't careless. He was intentionally betraying her trust. And I knew I couldn't allow it to continue. Over the next few weeks, I began to watch him more closely. I documented every suspicious move, every lie, every manipulative comment he made. I started organizing Grandma's financial records myself, secretly making copies of critical documents and ensuring she had access to everything. One afternoon, I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. My uncle was on the phone, talking to someone in a tone so casual, so unconcerned, it was terrifying. Yeah, she has no idea. Once she's out of the house, the money is mine, he said, laughing quietly. I couldn't believe my ears. He was plotting, deliberately, carefully, and without a shred of conscience. From that moment on, I knew I had to step up. I couldn't just sit back and let him destroy her trust, betray her love, and take what was rightfully hers. I began to create a plan, not a rash or reckless plan, but a careful, strategic approach to protect Grandma and ensure justice was served. Meanwhile, Grandma remained blissfully unaware of the full extent of his betrayal. She trusted him deeply, and it hurt me to see her kindness being exploited. I made sure to support her emotionally, offering small reassurances while keeping the harsh reality hidden until the right time. The tension reached a boiling point one afternoon when I confronted my uncle directly. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't accuse him, at least not outright. I simply asked questions, probing, carefully observing his reactions. His charming facade cracked for just a moment, revealing the greed and frustration simmering beneath. He smiled tightly, trying to regain control of the situation. But I could see the panic in his eyes. From that day on, the atmosphere in the house became electric. Every word, every glance, every minor disagreement felt charged with an unspoken battle. I knew it was only a matter of time before the confrontation escalated further. And then came the next stormy night, this one more intense than the last. The rain beat against the windows like a relentless drum, thunder shaking the walls. Grandma called me again, whispering urgently. I didn't even wait for details. I drove through the pouring rain, heart pounding, fearing the worst. When I arrived, the scene was almost cinematic. Grandma is sitting alone, her coat drenched, the wind whipping through her hair, and my uncle nowhere in sight. The betrayal had reached its peak. I helped her inside, sat her by the fireplace, and finally, she began to cry openly. I held her, letting her release all the fear, the hurt, and the betrayal she had bottled up for weeks. That night, I made a silent vow. I would protect her, and I would ensure that justice was done. Her kindness, her trust, and her life's work would not be destroyed by greed. I began preparing, gathering evidence, organizing her finances, and slowly setting the pieces in place. Every careful step, every observation, was part of a plan that would one day reveal the truth and deliver a final, shocking justice that no one would see coming. The tension, the fear, the emotional stakes, they all led to one inevitable moment, the will reading, where Grandma's final wishes would be revealed and the betrayal fully exposed. But before we reached that climax, there were more lessons to be learned, more manipulation to navigate, and more suspense to build. The days following the stormy night felt like walking on a tightrope. Every interaction in Grandma's house carried the weight of suspicion and fear. Uncle's presence, which had once seemed harmless, now felt like a looming threat. I could see it in the way he lingered near her, in the subtle control he tried to exert, in the quiet manipulations disguised as concern. He was testing boundaries, probing for weaknesses, and it was almost frightening how skilled he was at hiding his intentions behind a veneer of family loyalty. Grandma, as always, remained gentle and trusting. She would say things like, "He's just tired. He doesn't mean anything by it." Or, "He's family. He'll come around." But I could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the subtle tremble in her hands when she handed him money or listened to his excuses. My heart ached watching someone so kind and strong be taken advantage of. I knew I couldn't confront him directly again, not yet, not until I had all the pieces in place. So I focused on preparing, documenting every interaction, every lie, every attempt to manipulate or intimidate her. I kept detailed notes, copies of bills, and recorded conversations with Grandma's consent. Every detail mattered. Then came another incident that left me furious. One afternoon, I returned from the grocery store to find Grandma visibly upset. Her favorite china cup, a small piece she had cherished for decades, was missing. When I asked, she hesitated, tears welling in her eyes. "Hey, he said it was for safekeeping," she whispered. That familiar, charming smile of my uncle's, the one that once made him seem so trustworthy, now felt like a mask hiding pure selfishness. It became clear that his greed wasn't just financial. It was emotional too. He wanted control, dominance, and the satisfaction of bending my grandmother to his will. And it was working, at least in small, subtle ways. I had to act, and I had to act strategically. I began spending more time with Grandma, engaging her in conversations about her wishes, her memories, her values. I wanted her to feel empowered, to realize she had options, and to prepare mentally for what needed to be done. We went through her estate together, listing each asset, discussing her favorite memories associated with each one, and ensuring she understood exactly what she wanted to happen. It wasn't just about money, it was about dignity, respect, and protecting the legacy of a life well lived. Uncle, sensing resistance, began showing cracks. His comments became sharper, his patience thinner. One evening, as he argued over a minor household expense, I noticed a shift. For the first time, his confidence faltered, and I could see the frustration building beneath his carefully crafted exterior. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but I had seen enough to know the tide was turning. Then came the pivotal moment. The night before the lawyer's visit to finalize the will. The tension in the house was unbearable. Grandma was quiet, reflective, her eyes distant as she recounted stories of her youth. I stayed by her side, quietly reassuring her, keeping her calm. Uncle, sensing the importance of the moment, became restless, pacing, muttering under his breath, trying to intimidate, trying to regain control. As the night deepened, I took a moment to reflect. I thought about everything that had happened, the small betrayals, the subtle manipulations, the stormy nights, the fear in Grandma's eyes. I realized that this wasn't just a battle over money. It was a test of character, a demonstration of who truly valued family, loyalty, and integrity. My role was clear: protect her, preserve her dignity, and ensure that justice was done. The emotional peak came when Grandma, sensing my resolve, confided in me fully. She spoke about her fears, her hopes, and her ultimate desire for fairness. "I just want everyone to be treated as they deserve," she said softly. "I want the truth to come out, even if it hurts." Her words were both heartbreaking and empowering. I knew then that whatever happened the next day at the will reading, she would be protected, and the betrayal would not go unanswered. As dawn approached, the storm outside mirrored the storm inside the house. The tension, the fear, the anticipation. Every move, every glance, every word carried weight. The house felt electric, as if it knew that the culmination of weeks of deception and careful planning was about to arrive. By the time the lawyer arrived the next morning, everyone was on edge. My uncle carried his usual smug demeanor, pretending confidence, but I could see the cracks. Grandma, calm and composed, radiated quiet strength. I stayed close, ready to support her and witness the revelation that would shake our family to its core. Little did my uncle know, all of his manipulations, all of his lies, all of his attempts to control the situation, had been carefully documented and countered. The stage was set for the shocking revelation, the ultimate twist, and the justice that would finally bring peace. The day of the will reading arrived with a heavy tension in the air. The house felt different, charged with anticipation, as if it could sense that a truth long hidden was about to emerge. I arrived early with Grandma, making sure she felt calm and supported. She sat quietly in the living room, her hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes bright but calm. She seemed at peace, despite the turmoil that had built over the past weeks. The lawyer, a tall, stern woman with silver hair and glasses perched on the bridge of her nose, entered with the will in hand. My uncle followed behind, his usual confident smile plastered on his face, pretending as if nothing were amiss. But I could see it. The subtle tension in his shoulders, the way he avoided eye contact, the slight trembling of his hands. He knew something was coming, though he had no idea just how carefully everything had been planned. The room was quiet, and everyone was seated in a semicircle. Grandma's friends and close family members were present, along with my father and me. The air was thick with anticipation, and every small noise, the ticking of the clock, the rustle of paper, felt amplified. The lawyer began to speak. "We are gathered today to read the last will of Mrs. Margaret Lawson," she said formally. "This document outlines her final wishes and the distribution of her estate." She cleared her throat and opened the folder. I could feel my grandma's hand tremble slightly as she gripped mine. "She has made some very specific decisions," the lawyer continued, her voice steady but deliberate. "Decisions that reflect her values and the people she trusts to honor them." All eyes turned to my uncle. He shifted uneasily in his seat, trying to maintain his composure. His charm had always masked his intentions, but now the stakes were clear, and the cracks were beginning to show. The lawyer read aloud the first few bequests: small amounts to friends, donations to local charities, and gifts to family members. My uncle's impatience grew with each line, his jaw tightening, hands clenching. Then came the section that mattered most. "And to my grandson," the lawyer said, looking directly at me, "I leave the responsibility of ensuring my estate is protected and my final wishes carried out." Grandma's eyes glistened with pride as she nodded slightly. My heart pounded. "And now," To the person I trusted to care for me in my later years. The lawyer continued, turning a page. I leave a conditional bequest of 900,000. However, this trust is contingent upon the care and respect provided to me during my final months. Should this person fail in their duties, the entire estate shall be redistributed according to my alternate provisions. A collective gasp swept through the room. My uncle's face paled, his confident smirk replaced with a mask of shock and anger. He opened his mouth, but the lawyer continued, not allowing him to speak. The alternate provisions designate my grandson. Again, she looked at me, as the primary beneficiary and executor of the estate. All assets, including property, savings, and personal belongings, shall be under his care. Any breach of trust, neglect, or mistreatment by my uncle results in the immediate forfeiture of his inheritance rights. The room fell into stunned silence. My uncle, normally so composed, was frozen, his lips moving but no words coming out. Grandma looked at me with a calm, almost triumphant smile. I told you, she whispered. I knew who I could trust. I felt a surge of emotion, relief, pride, and a quiet vindication. All the careful planning, all the observations, all the documentation I had gathered over the past months had ensured that justice was served. My uncle had tried to exploit her, to manipulate her trust, but he had underestimated the combination of her foresight and my determination to protect her. The lawyer continued, detailing the precise steps for the redistribution of the estate. Assets that had been intended for my uncle were now reassigned to other family members' charities, and, importantly, to me as the executor. Grandma's final wishes were clear. She valued loyalty, care, and integrity over blind familial trust, and she had ensured that those who betrayed her would not benefit. My uncle sat in stunned silence, realizing that every attempt to deceive, manipulate, and control had failed. His betrayal, so carefully hidden for months, had unraveled in the most public and undeniable way possible. He had been outmaneuvered, not through malice, but through love, foresight, and justice. Grandma reached over and squeezed my hand. Thank you for standing by me, she said quietly. I could not have done this without you. Tears welled up in my eyes as I hugged her gently, feeling the full weight of the moment. The fear, the struggle, and now the triumph. The room slowly regained composure as the lawyer concluded the reading. Gusts murmured, some in disbelief, others in quiet admiration of the clever resolution. My uncle left the house later that day, his face pale, his confidence shattered. He would not benefit from the estate, and the lesson had been delivered with the full force of Grandma's wisdom and careful planning. I looked at my grandmother, her eyes shining with relief and pride. You did it, she said softly. You protected everything I've built. You made sure that love and care won over greed and betrayal. That day, justice had been served. Not through confrontation, not through anger, but through patience, careful planning, and unwavering commitment to doing what was right. The estate was safe, her wishes honored, and my uncle's betrayal exposed for all to see. It was the culmination of months of tension, fear, and careful observation. A climax that taught everyone in that room the true value of loyalty, trust, and family. And for me, it was a lesson I would never forget. When someone you love is threatened, patience, strategy, and love can ensure that justice prevails most powerfully and unforgettably. The storm had passed, both literally and metaphorically. The tension that had gripped our home for months had finally dissipated, leaving behind a sense of calm, relief, and quiet triumph. Sitting beside my grandmother in the living room, I felt an overwhelming mixture of emotions, pride, gratitude, and deep respect for her wisdom. She looked around the room, taking in the faces of family and friends who had come to witness the will reading, and a small, contented smile spread across her face. I feel at peace now, she said softly, her voice steady and warm. I can finally rest, knowing that my wishes have been honored, and that love and care will always be valued above greed. I reached out and took her hand gently, feeling the frailty of her fingers and the weight of the decades she had lived through. You've done more than anyone could imagine, I said. You taught us all a lesson in courage, foresight, and the power of love. She chuckled softly, a sound that carried both warmth and a hint of mischief. Sometimes, the best way to protect those you love is to plan carefully, even if it means letting them believe they have control. Her eyes twinkled knowingly. And sometimes, you have to let others learn their lessons the hard way. Her words resonated deeply with me. For weeks, I had been consumed with fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. I had questioned myself, wondered if I was doing enough, if I had acted wisely, if I could truly protect her. But in that moment, I understood that the combination of her foresight and my vigilance had created a shield that no greed, no betrayal could penetrate. It was also a moment of reflection on family and the bonds that truly matter. My uncle's betrayal had been painful, yes, but it also revealed something important. True loyalty is rare, and it must be nurtured, recognized, and protected. Grandma had chosen wisely in the end, trusting those who had shown care, patience, and integrity, rather than those who had relied solely on blood ties. I began to share this with the people around me, speaking softly but clearly. Family is more than who shares your DNA, I said. It's about who stands by you when it matters most, who respects and values you, and who acts with kindness and integrity even when no one is watching. Grandma nodded, her eyes glistening with emotion. It's about understanding who deserves your trust, she added. Not everyone who claims to love you truly does, and it's our responsibility to recognize that while there's still time. For the younger members of the family, this was a lesson in vigilance. For my peers, it was a reminder that even in the face of betrayal, patience, observation, and careful action can restore balance and ensure justice. And for those in our older generation, it reaffirmed the importance of wisdom, foresight, and the quiet strength that comes from a life well lived. After the lawyer had left and the formalities of the will reading were complete, I spent more time with Grandma, listening to her stories, laughing at her memories, and reflecting on the lessons embedded within them. She spoke about the early days of her bakery, the challenges she faced as a single parent raising my father, and the joy she found in small, everyday victories. Each story was infused with meaning, a testament to her resilience and her unwavering belief in the value of family. It struck me then that the real inheritance wasn't the money, the property, or the material assets. It was the wisdom, the love, and the lessons she had imparted over a lifetime. These were treasures that no one could take away, and they were far more valuable than anything measured in dollars. I also realized something else. While betrayal can wound deeply, it can also illuminate who truly deserves our trust and attention. My uncle's actions had revealed his character, but they had also clarified the boundaries we must maintain in our lives. Trust, once given, should never be blind, it should be earned and observed. In the days and weeks that followed, I continued to help Grandma manage her estate, ensuring that her wishes were executed precisely as she intended. We worked together to organize her assets, distribute gifts to friends and charities, and establish safeguards for her remaining property. Through it all, I felt a profound sense of purpose, knowing that my actions had honored her, protected her, and preserved the legacy she had worked so hard to build. There were moments of quiet reflection as well. I thought about the lessons I had learned, lessons that I would carry with me for the rest of my life. First, that patience and careful observation can prevent disaster. Second, that love and loyalty are far more powerful than greed and deceit. Third, that protecting those who are vulnerable is not just an obligation, but a privilege. And finally, that true justice is not always immediate. It can be crafted, planned, and delivered with precision when the time is right. I spoke to my grandmother one evening as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "Do you feel at peace now?" I asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She smiled softly, her eyes reflecting both relief and pride. "Yes," she said. "I feel at peace knowing that the truth has been honored, and that those who acted with kindness and integrity have been recognized. And I feel peace knowing that love will continue to guide this family long after I'm gone." Her words stayed with me, echoing in my heart long after the day had ended. They reminded me that life is not just about wealth, status, or control. It's about the connections we forge, the trust we build, and the courage to stand up for what is right, even in the face of betrayal. As the story came to a close, I reflected on the journey we had all endured, the moments of doubt, fear, and uncertainty, and the ultimate triumph of justice, wisdom, and love. It was a story that would be remembered, not just for the shocking betrayal or the dramatic twist at the will reading, but for the profound lessons it imparted. To anyone listening, here is my advice: cherish those who truly care for you. Observe carefully those you trust, and never be afraid to take action when someone you love is threatened. Justice is not always instant, but with patience, foresight, and unwavering commitment, it can be achieved. And above all, remember that love, integrity, and loyalty are the true measures of a life well lived, far more valuable than anything money can buy. Protect them, nurture them, and honor them every day. As Grandma rested peacefully that evening, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The storm had passed, the betrayal had been exposed, and the legacy of wisdom, love, and justice had been preserved. And in that quiet moment, I knew that together, we had created something far more lasting than wealth. We had safeguarded the essence of what it truly means to be family. Thanks for being here and feeling this story with me. If this touched you, explore more videos on the channel to inspire and empower your journey.